question. So without drinking water, we don't have life. And if the scientific community feels that it's an open question, it would be very hazardous to our existence to go down that path. Once we do, there's no turning back.
The power companies used to, is the word dioxins?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. I have a sister who was poisoned and ultimately died from dioxins, my sister Tom. And weakened her muscles. And they were going through, when they sprayed, she lived just off the edge of this power line. And she lived there a long time. And
if I could continue, I do.
No, and my point is that there's a perfect example of unintended consequences.
Yes.
Right, something that was once legal that we wouldn't dream of doing again. And, you know, so...
But there's also a history, Congressman, to lead if you get your way. But there's also a history of the corporations that become aware of the unsafe nature of things to keep that hidden from the public. We have DDT as examples, we have medications as an example, etc. I am pleased with Governor Patterson, the outgoing Patterson, who has shifted the onus. He said it's not up to us to prove that the thing is dangerous. On the other hand, it's up to them to prove that it is safe, which is quite a shift, you see, there. So I would offer that as something to look at. I also have congressional members intensifying hydrofracking probe. This is Waxman's committee. And what they did was to give until August 6th, that's this August 6th, for the 10 top hydrofracking companies to indicate that they would voluntarily come before the committee and explain what procedures are in, so that while fracking is done, what happens after with wastewater, etc. I've been trying to find out if he's gotten any response. If not, I believe it's his intention to sue. I'm with the group called Shenango Community Action for Renewable Energy. We recognize that there are farmers that are in desperate straits. They're not the only ones in desperate straits. We have a local school district that uses school newspaper to bring home to parents, carried by their children home to the parents. And in there, he gave model letters that you should write, urging your local legislators, that's the Assembly people and the Senate, to please write this following letter and change the words a bit so they'll think it's coming from you. That you think that school districts should have the same right as other municipalities so that they can drill and use hydrofracking drilling on school property. Now, this is kind of
the lobbyists.
Well, I guess when you're running around the track, all that wasted land in the middle could have a nice gas pump on it or something. Finally, if I can just say finally, I spoke with Supervisor Phelan in my county. It was Annette who spoke up because one of the supervisors, we were requesting to please endorse the resolution for a moratorium and please, etc. And one supervisor responded, well, we have to have balance. And Annette said, well, if we have balance and we have a pro-gas county committee that's there to get gas drilling moving along, where's the balance? Is there also a committee for renewable energy? And that's what we're pushing on now. John Phelan is building a windmill in his town, not without controversy, I understand that. And he's the supervisor of Coventry. So Phelan said to me that without fracking, he said the reason you have fracking and high volume pressure is to get a lot of gas out in a very short period of time. And he said you can get it over a 30-year period if you go by the traditional method, and then you don't need these big transmission lines. You can have on-site use of the gas. And I don't know too much. I don't know the technical answers to that. Must you use fracking?
Can we let Luke follow up, and then I think we need to get going.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Would you like it to speak? Well,
yeah. Can you make it?
Yeah, sure.
2 minutes? Okay.
oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I'm Dr. Annette Bannisteal, and I work in OBGYN. And concern about this discussion is based on what I can predict, having been in the industry for many years. What I can predict will happen to any child that's conceived with this kind of environment of gas fields everywhere. So my main interest is to reframe the discussion, to lift it to another level. And I think the level I'd like to see it go into is really consider wealth, because that's at the key here. Energy, it's at the key. And the most important one is rights. Rights. So wealth is well-being. And well-being means that the commonwealth, the commons, are served in such a way that they can thrive. Not just survive or die, but thrive. If you have this multitude of drilling with gas fields everywhere that we know from some of the material that Kent's presented, but we also know from the lives of people, is very toxic and contaminating. We will not thrive. We will survive at best, or we will die. The human cell needs three things for mating. It needs clean air, clean water, and food that comes from the 11 inches of good topsoil that gives you nutrition. All of those are at risk with this type of drilling proposal, every single one. Now, we're adults and we can maybe survive. We will not thrive. We might survive. Babies in the womb will not do that. It is too concentrated. The air will be polluted, the whole process. It's not just what will happen to the water. It's the fallout of the drilling, of the big compression stations, the whole 9 yards, cutting down trees, which clean air. So I'm just saying. So wealth is important, but it's not wealth that's promoted by the profit motive, where only an uncommon wealth of a few will flourish and the rest of us will suffer. That is not okay. And since we do not have a government that's a commonwealth where the people are making the decisions, we depend on you to make the decisions for us, to keep us in well-being. That's what wealth means, well-being. And there are things you cannot do with money that supply that well-being. So, and the whole thing about rights. We have a right to clean, drinkable water, clean, breathable air. We have a right to food that's grown on topsoil that isn't contaminated. And we have a right to energy that is produced by either the sun, the wind, or geothermal, where you do not bring in the risk. It's called precautionary principle. You do not bring in the risk of contaminating those necessary ingredients for survival. And I think we've got to raise the discussion to what the rights are of the earth itself and all of us, and to where the wealth really lies. I mean, what is our true wealth? Profit motive for an uncommon wealth is not acceptable. It just isn't. So we raise the discussion and broaden it. We just talk about gas, we'll never get anywhere because the gas companies are too powerful and they'll go. So we have to have an alternative, and we have to decide that it's against our rights. We have a right to these essentials to life, and especially the next generation, the babies in the womb. I'm telling you, they won't survive. That's why Theo Coburn is out there. She's saying this list of 200 and some, and we know it might be 500, is lethal. I mean, many of them are endocrine disruptors. I can tell you what endocrine disruptors. I worked in the NICU. I know what it's like. It's pathetic. Baby's born, you don't know if it's a genital, is it female or male. This is really happening, and then you multiply that by all the kids. It's already kind of threatening, but you multiply that by the gas bill and you're out. So I just hope that we can raise the discussion, frame it differently, and say, how can we meet the needs of people for their well-being to thrive, for the energy that we need, and respect our rights. Those three. Just my thought. But it's necessary to raise it. It's a fiber.
But I would like to not leave this discussion with the notion that when we say it's a divisive issue, there are equal numbers on each side.